So hi, my name is Dave Rempel, and we're out here at our property on 6 Mile Lake Road. I've been here since the mid-80s, I guess, and not too long after I decided I could start some gardening and some trees. So what you see here is a trailman apple tree that's planted in the mid-90s or so it's coming on close to 30 years old. And here we have a few other trees that I've managed to plant over the years, which have given us lots of harvest, more than enough applesauce and juice to keep our family happy, and there are lots to give away as well. We enjoy sharing that. So then I also joined the Master Gardeners some years ago and have enjoyed learning from them and sharing with them, and yeah, so gardening has been good to us. Yeah, so when you plant a tree, now mostly in the Prince George area, we've got a lot of clay, and so you don't want to plant it too high out of the ground, otherwise the frost might get the roots before the tree gets established, and you don't want to get it too low, otherwise you'll end up with like planting the tree in a bathtub and it'll drown because the water will just stay in the hole that you dug, and the trees need air as well. You do want the graft to be, the graft union is usually a little growth, thicker part there near the bottom. You want that above the ground. Otherwise, if you plant that below, then what will happen, the tree might form roots from the top part, the scion part, and not from the below, which is the rootstock, which is meant to give it its disease resistance, and it controls the height of the tree to some degree, as well as other factors, hardiness. So yeah, so what you see here is I've over the first few years I try to keep the grass away from the trunk of the tree. The tree will be much more vigorous in our northern climates if you do that, at least at first. But also what you see here is an experiment I did this year. I planted some old tillage radish seed, a little bit too thick probably, but I didn't know how much would germinate. And the idea was to drill down and to loosen up the soil. The other thing that I do to try to keep the soil a little bit looser, since it's all clay, is to spread a little gypsum around each year, first in the planting hole, and then around each year a bit to loosen the clay and give the roots a little more freedom to move, to grow. And I put compost around, and that's about it. That's pretty well all that I've done for my fruit trees. When you do plant it, some people, they used to recommend that you enrich the soil and so on, but you actually don't need to do that. It's actually better if you don't. So if you dig your hole and use the original soil back in again, then the roots won't be tempted just to stay in the good soil that you might have and not keep growing out. For amendments, it's best to just put it on top, maybe work it in a little bit, and over time the rain and the creatures in the soil will bring the nutrients down that the roots need. This particular tree happens to be a Duchess of Oldenburg. It's a heritage variety, probably more for applesauce. It doesn't keep very long, and because I didn't thin them very well, they aren't that big this year. Last year they were a little bit larger, but that's all right. I like eating them. You can make juice out of them. You make juice out of all the apples. It's all good. This particular tree has a rootstock that's not common around here anyways. It's called Beautiful Arcade. So different rootstocks are matched with different varieties to give either different hardiness. Some are better in clay soil, some are better in wetter soil, colder climates, warmer climates. various kinds of disease resistance, height of the tree. The trees that I have are pretty well all semi-dwarf instead of dwarf, partly because I have the space for it, but also because they're a tad hardier than the dwarf. The dwarf trees, partly the reason they're dwarf is they have smaller root systems, that's part of it, and so they're not as hardy as semi-standard. Now, standard trees might be too large, so in fact some of these are getting a little bit too big for me and my ladder. I have to keep cutting the tops back. So this is a Haralson tree. Again, the apples aren't all that big right now, just nice for a snack, but this is a really lasting or a good storage apple. It was bred in the 1950s in someplace like Minnesota or someplace like that. I'm not exactly sure right now, but so you pick it, you put it in the cellar. It's the last one to ripen, so try to keep it going as long as possible before it freezes too much. If it goes to -2, 3, maybe 4, 1 or 2 nights, it's still okay, but after that you should probably pick these apples. And yeah, they will last like months. You don't even have to bother looking at them till after Christmas. And then once the others are, you're finished with them, you can start in with these. Not terribly sweet, but they last a nice long time. Now you might notice this tree is a little bit more open than the other ones you've seen. I'm not sure how much it's the tree and how much it's me. They say that when you prune, you're supposed to be able to, like a bird is supposed to be able to fly straight through. The point being that the leaves in the back of the tree, the north side, are supposed to get light as well. Now, I've never been too successful at that, but so the north side, the trees, the apples aren't as good or as abundant as on the south side, but I just live with that. So there's 2 kinds of pruning, and most of it is dormant pruning. So in spring, after it's not so cold anymore, you thin where you can. You cut out dead ones, you cut out branches that may be crossing or broken, and then you try to keep it so that sunlight can get through to more or less all parts of the tree. But then sometimes you can also do summer pruning, and that is, you probably want to do it more at the beginning of August. But if you have here this year's growth, after it's got, grown till say beginning of August or end of July, and if it's not looking nice and healthy, what you can do is cut off the top and leave like say 4 or 5 leaves. What that does is it takes away the hormone at the end that tells the tree to grow longer, tells the branch to grow longer, and it encourages fruiting so that you can increase your fruit production that way. So you clip them off, not all of them maybe, but at least some of them. And I've tried that a little bit because many of these apples are biennial bearing. They're really heavy one year and light the next year. So if the tree is doing well on a heavy year, if you do the summer pruning, then maybe on the light year you'll get a little bit more fruit. Not sure how well that works, but try to balance things out a little bit that way. So sometimes you get these suckers growing from the base, and if you can rip them off, they say that's good to do, but I don't know. Yeah, that one ripped off. Otherwise I clip them off. Probably get more growing again next year, but oh well. Right, That's correct. They're growing from the rootstock, and you want this variety, not that variety. This variety here on top is what gives you the fruit. So here again, you can see the swollen part, and so that was the graft. Yeah. So how do you know when an apple is ready to pick? Well, if you lift it and maybe twist it a bit, if it comes off easily, then it's generally pretty close to being ready. And then if you like, you can cut it open and see. Now this one, the seeds are still white, so it's probably good for applesauce, but maybe you'd want to wait a few more days and let it ripen a bit longer before fresh eating it. So, well, I don't know. We'll see. See how brown this one is. Oh yeah. So these ones don't have very big seeds, but you can see the seed is brown already. So this one should be tasty. Okay, so I've had very few problems with disease or pests. Actually, I've never, in plus 30 years, never had to spray these trees. Not sure why. I'm quite sure why I'm so blessed for that. But I've never had to cut worms. There's been no pest problems at all. Maybe it's because there's no other apple trees close by in the neighborhood. I'm not sure why. I also try to be quite careful. Anything that falls on the ground, I try to pick up and either compost or get rid of so that it doesn't encourage anything. One kind of problem that you get sometimes is apple scab, and a little bit doesn't hurt anything, but if it's serious, then the apples don't grow properly and maybe don't ripen properly, certainly don't store very well. But one way to limit it, I think it's spread by spores, and so if you and they live in the litter in the dead leaves over winter. So if you can be neat about raking up, mowing up, whatever, getting rid of the leaves that fall down, maybe composting them, then you're less likely for this scab to spread to the trees. So here we have a North Kent apple tree. I bought these trees in the mid-90s, so I'm not that familiar with the current crop of apple varieties you can find, but I really like the flavor of this one, and it doesn't go bad in the cellar till after Christmas. It's still like nice and firm, but the flavor starts to go. So it's good to eat them before Christmas if you can, or make applesauce or juice out of them, or freeze them, use them in baking, whatever. So yeah, that's the one variety. Now when the tree was smaller, I was worried about the birds coming and pecking on the ripe apples. So I tried making a teepee out of long small poplar trees, cut them down, and I put binder twine around them, having read that if a crow couldn't see very well how to fly in and land, maybe they wouldn't go in and land there. I don't know. It was a lot of work. Maybe it worked. I'm not sure. I've also tried balloons, like an eye, a couple of years. Now I don't worry about it that much. Maybe if they peck a few apples, oh well, I have more than enough. But at the beginning, it seemed like they found the next ripe one all the time. They found the next ripe one, and I'd wait another day and they'd find the next ripe one. So that was rather irritating. Otherwise, birds haven't been too much of a problem lately. You can see around the bear fencing that I have, it's an electric fence. So bears are not don't have much finesse when they come and pick a tree, it seems. They break the tree down, so I have to use an electric fence to keep the bear out. Moose, I can't do too much about the moose in spring. They do want to, because I don't have a dog, maybe a dog would help, I don't know. They do like to eat the ends of the new growth, but they do kind of a lousy job of pruning, so I have to come after and tidy up usually. And so far I haven't had deer. I'm not sure what I would do yet if deer came by, but those are more or less the animals that like the same food I do. So you might think that buying an apple tree is kind of an expensive investment given the price of apple trees these days, but actually it's a good long-term investment. Over the years I've had probably hundreds of boxes of apples, not every year. Actually one year, I'm not gonna sit. One year, I think my best year of my 10 trees or so, I had like 80 boxes of apples like this. So between the apples and the crab apples. So that's a lot of apples and a lot of applesauce. So you've got stuff to give away. You can make your own juice, your own applesauce, your own baking, fresh eating. You don't need to buy. And it's been good.